Barangaroo Studios, the AusBiz COB is the key stuff you need to know about the day in business and finance.
Hello and welcome to the COB, everything you need to know in the day in business and markets. My name is Kyle Rodder. I'm with Danny Akuye. Danny, well, it was a nice start. Maybe pulled back a little bit throughout the session, I dare say. Perhaps
yes,
the CPI
indeed.
data out of the States, keeping a few people to the sidelines.
Indeed, it looks like the ASX 200 has closed up 32 points or 0.5%, and there we go. SIBO looks a little bit more robust, and it's interesting because that must be in terms of how the different sectors are weighted, because a lot of the gains today, when I had a quick peek, tell me if I'm gonna catch the three themes thunder, but look, at the end of the day, it was really a story about energy and materials.
It was, I suppose, really it's kind of this noise out of China once again, as far as I can tell, that really seems to be generating some of this excitement. We'll see if there's... Speculation indeed. We'll see if finally it starts to meet expectations, or, well, I guess, is met with some bite rather than just bark, because, well, we've been sort of, what's the saying? Once bitten, twice shy.
Indeed.
When it comes to policy support in China. But nevertheless, like you said, it does seem to be that energy and material space that's driving things higher.
Absolutely, and healthcare continuing to lag. Information technology had been on a tear yesterday. It's a little bit softer today, but obviously, a lot of the traders, they're going to position, aren't they, to have neutral books probably going in. I don't know if you call it a neutral book, but they don't want big positions, I assume, going into tonight's CPI read, which we have been talking lots about, haven't we?
We will, and there's every chance that we might be talking about it more in the next 24 hours or so. We'll get to that in just a moment, but also some big macro news today. The RBNZ kept interest rates on hold for the first time in 12 meetings, which is effectively 2 years almost when it comes to their
5.5%.
Yep, at 5.5%. And well, markets are actually still pricing that there could be a few more to come, but increasingly looking like the job could be close to done there in New Zealand.
Well, they're in recession.
Well, they are in a technical recession,
yeah.
So, and the unemployment rate's stubborn. It's about 3.5% still, but it was as low as 3.1 or something like that. Right. So starting to turn around a little bit. Inflation's turning lower as well. So being much more aggressive, I guess. Some might say it's sort of the leader when it comes to tightening policy across the globe.
Yeah, indeed. Them in Canada.
Yeah, which actually tonight, Bank of Canada. But anyway, we'll get to that eventually. Another thing was Governor Lowe spoke today.
He did.
A lot of it was on that review of the central bank. So we got some colour around, how that will look in it from a practical point of view, especially for market participants. One actually, Kit Lowe, of course, who we had on the last call a couple of weeks ago, made a really interesting point on Twitter about, it's going to be really hard to judge what futures prices are suggesting about future RBA policy, because we actually don't know when half the meetings next year will be, what month they'll fall in.
Yes, indeed.
So we know, I think it's February, May, August and November, if I'm not mistaken, we've got the meetings settled for.
But and then the other ones are still up in the air, are they?
Yeah, well, we've got to find at some point in the middle of those meetings, we'll have to whack another one, because there'll only be 8, and we don't know when they'll be. So there was that. But there was also obviously the inevitable questions about policy going forward, and it was a little bit of, well, we'll talk to you in August, guys, because we've got some data to look at before we make any decisions.
He's deadly serious about getting inflation back to target, which I did tweet, much to the amusement of a lot of people.
Yeah, right. This reminds me of an old vice principal I used to have when I was dragged in front of the office. He'd look at you as Scottish, I'm deadly serious. Don't do it again. And I'd be
Hopefully
like, probably will.
He didn't get the cane out.
They didn't hit us back then. They couldn't.
Know.
That would have probably sorted me out. It would have been good for me. But anyway, that's what we've been looking at in terms of the stories of the day. We did talk about where the strength was, and that's primarily the miners, energy and materials in particular. And you can see there.
Fortescue.
There you go. Yeah,
up 3%.
Back about $22 as well.
Well, the speculators are very much in the iron ore markets at the moment. So, yeah, clearly hoping that when the Politburo meets, I think it's at the end of July, that they are going to come out with something more substantive, because really at the moment, the PBOC and everyone, they've been tweaking at the edges, haven't they? It's all been, a little bit of talk, but nothing too substantive.
Yeah, the term that I constantly hear from people on the big picture is, animal spirits. The issue is that there's such a lack of confidence, especially amongst Chinese consumers and businesses, that, it's really having trouble. And anything that they do, and they want to be sort of measured in their approach, is just sort of not spurring those animal spirits necessarily. So, had a good chat actually with Alex Liu today about that and how it can feed into the Australian economy from a macro point of view, of course. But I digress. Let's look at the tech stocks because, as you said before, that's where, if any weakness were to be found today, it was in tech. A computer share up.
Higher rates normally they benefit.
Yeah. Xero and WiseTech though, which is always kind of good barometers for the whole space. Mixed to negative at best. Yeah.
Indeed.
Okay, so we said before about the sort of the Lowe and RBN story. They were probably the news of the day, but you're at the driver's seat today again for the call. We
had lots of fun.
We did. It almost turned into karaoke.
Almost. You'll have to watch it and catch up and see where the little joke was. But the stock of the day was Integrated Research, and we were joined by Henry Jennings and Andrew Vilant. And let's have a listen and see what they had to say.
We think there's going to be more need for HR services, HR, IT, etc. The PE, though, is probably still a little demanding at 14, 15 times, even though we had some pretty good a good update today. The market is forecasting about a 65% increase in earnings over the next 12 months. So if they can achieve that, then the PE of 14 or 15 times is probably not too demanding, but one swallow a summer does not make. I'd probably be holding for the time being on this one.
So given that we've had a bit of a pop today, and I suspect we'll have a little bit of profit taking, but I would imagine that we're going to see some brokers warm to this one. As I say, it hasn't had any announcements, it hasn't had any new information for a long, long time. I think February was the numbers and the last set of real information we had out of the company. So it's good to get a bit of an update. It was a good update. It's obviously kicked. I think it's got potential to go higher as well, but maybe just a bit of consolidation after this move. But they're still talking about cost pressures, but those employee-related costs and travel, and those are part of the thing. But I think, this is definitely a hold. I agree with Andrew. And if it came back to sort of 40 cents again, I think you would be in pretty good space to be accumulating that one.
Okay, so verdict there, was that sort of a hold on balance?
Yeah, a hold. Yeah, not particularly excited either.
I was going to say, it's a very ugly chart.
It is a very ugly chart. Yeah, we didn't have lots of enthusiasm for lots of stocks today, sadly.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Hence having to make up for it with the music, of course.
Yeah, indeed. Lots of alluded to a lot of songs. We were rather snappy in that direction.
It was highly entertaining, of course, the three of those. Watch back that episode if you can. But let's invite our guest in, of course, who joins us at the desk. Will Symes from Macro Capital joins us. Will, great to see you.
Thank you.
We're going to cover across a few things today, as well as a buy, hold, sell, which we always love. But just first and foremost, a general view on the market. A reasonably positive day, but I don't know, neutral going into that kind of CPI release tonight.
Yeah, I think investors are kind of cautiously watching to see what the read comes out at. The forecast at the moment is 3.1%, whilst the previous figure was 4%. So I do think if that does come in even in line with expectations, we're likely to get some positive moves. I think if it comes in with a 2 in front by chance, I think it'll be very positive. So I think the Fed's probably pleased with how things are going. Obviously still 50% or so above the target if it does come in at 3%. But I think cautiously optimistic at this point in time.
Indeed.
Yes, indeed. Will you be staying up to watch it?
Probably not.
Probably not.
I got to get my sleep in.
Indeed. Well, let's turn to some of the buy, hold, sell. So Macquarie.
Yep, look, they're called the vampire kangaroos overseas.
It's such an awful name.
It's a funny one. It's a funny one. So to do, obviously, with Goldman's name, the vampire squids. So very well regarded overseas and domestically, largely because of their kind of ruthless profit taking, as well as them being notorious for picking up distressed assets and then reconfiguring them into profitable assets and spinning them off. And so it kind of ties into what I was saying the other week about kind of exposure to some alternative assets as well. So they've kind of got exposure to that space inadvertently. Look, really high quality company, highest ROE of any investment bank in the world for the last few years. Strong management. They tend to underpromise on their report and then overdeliver. So you tend to get a pop on the report as well. So I think in the lead up to the report, we're comfortable to have some exposure. Today as well, it's just recently jumped above the 200-day moving average, which is the kind of insto buy and sell line. So we'd be comfortable looking at an allocation to Macquarie as one of our preferred financials names at the moment.
Interesting. Okay. Looking forward to the next one because it's one that Danny and I have actually been talking about
Yep.
in a variety of capacities over the last few weeks, and some of the probably tailwinds that the space has had, which is QBE. You think it's a hold at the moment?
I think it's a hold at the moment. Insurance tends to be a little bit more of a defensive sector in a contractionary economic environment, which we do quite like. They're definitely one of the primary names in the space, really sound management, continually growing their underlying earnings as well. And with these kind of rate increases, they should be able to increase their premiums. So we quite like the company. I think if you're holding it, it's obviously had a pretty significant run. I'd be looking to hold it for now. The other thing to do with the weather pattern, we've obviously had some pretty unfortunate weather the past few years with La Nina, but as we move into a kind of forecasted El Nino, hopefully less flooding and less storms, and they have to pay out less ideally as well.
I don't mean to be a pain in the La Nina, El Nino argument, but I did notice that there are some dreadful floods going on in the US again, which is really interesting. So I was just I was going to tweet it. I'm curious when the analysts are going to start to factor in some pretty extreme weather over in the US at the moment, because clearly that's where they have a lot of exposure. But nevertheless, let's move on to Medibank Private, which, gee, they've had a bit of a rough ride, haven't they, one way or another?
They certainly have. They obviously had that data breach back in October last year, and they had that pretty significant sell-off that you can see on the chart there. It's regained a lot of ground over the past nearly year or so. APRA's come out and hit them with an additional $250 million they need to hold on hand, and so I think that'll affect their ability to pay things like dividends, and I think investors probably do see it as a bit of a dividend paying stock. That said, it's only 4% and you can get that in a cash management account at this point in time. So they're also facing their fourth class action lawsuit from shareholders at this point in time, so they might be liable for damages there. So look, I think it's clawed its way back to the pre-data breach levels. At this point in time, looks like it could be poised for a little bit of downside and a consolidation around that 310, 320 mark. So it's probably not a company that we'd be looking to stay in, particularly given it has regained the ground over the past year or so.
Will, buy, hold, sell. We always love them. Really appreciate your time as always, Will Simons.
Thanks, appreciate it.
Macro Capital. Okay, let's get to the leaders and laggards, shall we? And looking across the leaders, of course, Megaport is up by 6.75%. Up the top of the market once again. But Inzitec Pivot, Capricorn Metals, actually that's turned around over the last few days.
It has. Oh,
we put the moz on it for a while.
We did. But Inzitec Pivot, apparently there are quite a few buyers for Eliza business.
Oh.
Yeah, I think that's where the rumours going around. And Woodside clearly going on a run with those stronger energy prices. And Life 360, we were chatting about that today as a nice, turnaround to being cash flow positive story. So that was one of the stories today.
Have you been chasing those cats around your neighbourhood yet?
No.
No, all right, well, fine. I'm just wondering.
All the dogs.
All the dogs.
Yeah.
Don't discriminate, of course.
Indeed.
Laggards, let's have a look at those. Where were they to be found? Helios, Persimmon. Anything that jumps off to you? Fairly narrow losses across the board, really.
No, nothing really. Just a couple of gold stocks in there. AUB, that's actually been a really, really good performer. So that is the insurance broker. I wrote about that the other day, and one of the favoured stocks, but it has gone up about 58%, if my memory serves me correctly, for the last year. So no, nothing in particular.
Okay, so a very piecemeal drop then, if that's the case. Let's look at the small cap leaders and laggards now.
Get confused.
Email payments is in there. That's at least one that tends to, divide opinion, if nothing else.
Geez, that is just
up again by 13.14%.
Such a mess, hasn't it?
We're talking about ones with ugly charts, right? I mean, I haven't looked at it for a little while, but certainly there was a period where it wasn't so strong.
Yeah, all the problems over in Ireland. Well, it's almost doubled off its recent lows of 42 cents. So I wonder what's going on there. Maybe they're, no new news.
No new news, okay. We'll move on just to the laggards in the small cap space too. And nothing on there that really sort of strikes me as all that remarkable. Hastings Tech Metals, the biggest laggard, down 14%. Just a lot of resource names and, just motorcycle. Just I've never heard of that.
No, never heard of it either.
Sort of
Australia has so many small caps, micro caps, which you just never know about.
Yeah, whenever you work for a broker, there's a different name for them. It's a rude word. But anyway,
we're not going there. We are going, what's on overnight?
Well, I wonder, what is it?
What could it be?
US CPI, of course, that'll be at 10:30 for those who have a slightly later bedtime than most, or if you're staying up to watch the tour of Wimbledon. I don't know if the Ashes are still on or not, but might be.
No, there's a break at the moment. We're waiting now for the next test.
All right, well, nevertheless, some sport on. You need some entertainment before that clicks on. US CPI data tonight, the expectations for 3% or so, give or take a percentage point or two. For consensus estimates, headline.
Do you think markets will race with the two handle in the front?
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah, I think there's. Well, I mean, my whole thing is that they're going to go 25 at the next meeting. Yeah. But it's about whether they go that extra 25 after that. Indeed. Which is there's still a 1 in 3 chance baked into the futures market. So if that gets priced out, there's a bit of scope for a run high as far as I can see. But Governor Bailey speaks. That'll be interesting because we think our governor has issues, and he does. He's probably not going to have his tenure or second term as a governor, but I mean the press around Governor Bailey is not particularly nice either.
No,
their economy is not in a great state.
No, it's not in a great state.
You know better than anyone, really, obviously having some connection there.
Yeah, well, no, I haven't spoken to anybody, but you'd need to have your eyes wide shut, wouldn't you, to see the world of pain they're in over there in terms of sticky inflation, labour costs are going up, yet unemployment's going up. It's not good. And of course the whole Brexit thing, how much of that has played a role. Yeah, not good.
Yeah, almost kind of stagflation light, really, in a way, or heading in that direction.
Back to the 70s.
But Bank of Canada as well, like we said before,
statement.
Also meeting, so that'll be at midnight tonight. Sometimes a little bit of a good kind of parallel to the RBA. And tomorrow, the day ahead, not much, very, very little in terms of Asian trade. Net Wealth Group quarterly report.
Right.
Though. So if you hold that might be something you want to tune into.
Funds flows.
Funds flows, well, exactly, there you go. So we'll get a bit of a sense there, but macro calendar a little bit lighter, and not until tomorrow evening will we get some more US labour market data, which could be fairly interesting. Well, let's wrap things up, shall we? And you've shrunk, Alice. What have you had?
Sorry.
Disappeared. All right.
Have a great evening.
Yeah, well, we'll catch you tomorrow. Maybe you can catch up on all the news and interviews on your website and app. Have a lovely night.